It is human nature to try to organize things. We classify animals, inanimate objects, trying to put things into neat little boxes. And with human beings, it is no different. The entire concept of race is trying to find shared characteristics between a certain group of people from a certain area. And from trying to find certain consistent characteristics, many stereotypes are birthed, both the good stereotypes and the bad. You know the stereotypes well. All Black people are athletic, or all of them have the genes that make them more muscular. There are stereotypes about white people saying that white people are extremely formal, or that they're the most plain, or that they're the normal and the standard for the human race.
Hi, how are you?
Oftentimes, people from within a certain racial group will perpetuate certain stereotypes, which leads to people boxing in the idea of how a person should act from said race. But what happens when someone who's born into a certain race or a certain group breaks those preconceived notions, those ideas that were made up by stereotypes, and acts differently from them? Well, you end up with the plight of the suburban Black kid. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Stereotypes are not good, whether you perceive them as good or bad. Just because you say all Asians are smart doesn't mean it's a compliment. And these stereotypes tend to negatively impact certain groups, whether consciously or subconsciously. Throw a person in a place where they are the minority and they will face this stereotyping. The majority group often interacts with the minority group based on the stereotypes that they perceive, whether it comes from media, whether it comes from experiences. This is how different groups interact. Since I was a Black kid growing up in a majority white neighborhood, I was often stereotyped. I moved out to the suburbs when I was 12 years old. That means during my formative years, I was surrounded by people who did not look like me. I was surrounded by people who did not necessarily think like me, didn't have the same experiences that I had. And subconsciously, it affected me. At first, when I attended school, kids were fascinated by me. I was the most popular kid in school for like 2 months. And being this 7th grade boy, at first I received all this validation. I was like, wow, this school is pretty cool. Looking back on it, I was probably one of the very few Black kids that attended that school. I was probably one of the few Black kids that these preteens had ever met. For a lot of these kids, what they knew about Black people came from rap, hip hop, came from movies, sports. So they viewed me through that lens. They were comparing me to this standard that had been set by media. They wanted me to be that stereotype. They wanted me to be hyper aggressive, be super athletic, have that exaggerated swagger of a Black teen. And when I didn't have that, my popularity went from being up here to a stark decline. Listen, I am an introverted Black nerd, okay? And not only am I an introverted Black nerd, I am an introverted Christian Black nerd. And if you know about how Black nerds were treated before the great cultural shift brought about by Michael B. Jordan and Noah Lyles and other figures in the Black community, making it socially acceptable to enjoy nerdy hobbies, you know it was rough. And because of that, my popularity disappeared. I went from being this interesting guy that people wanted to know to a nobody, or I was the subject of bullying. And that really affected me socially. And it left me questioning myself. I was like, what's wrong with me? Why don't people care? Why don't I really have such a close friend group? You know, and I made my friends, but it was difficult. On top of that, I was going through my awkward years being a 12-year-old kid. So this sudden popularity shift from being super popular to being treated as the weird kid was just very, very drastic and affected me a lot. Not only that, the education system in white suburbia compared to what you would be taught in a city is very different. I was taught that the Civil War was fought over mainly states' rights. I was taught that Dr. King was a moderate and that he wasn't as radical as he used to be. I was taught that America was not as brutal as I've come to know. It was very, very different. So I'm facing this social pressure. I'm being taught something that kind of contradicts the worldview that I had gotten up until that point. To experience that as a young boy, it does affect you mentally because you don't fit in with one group. But then there's another problem. The other side of that problem was that I was too white for black people.
Oh no!
After moving to the suburbs, I didn't lose contact with my old friends, and I still regularly went to the city because my dad's a pastor out there and I serve in my church. But whenever I hung out with black kids or Latino kids, I felt extremely out of place. I didn't have the same experiences that they had. I didn't hold the same opinions that they did. I didn't speak the way they spoke, nor was I thinking like they did, because at that point, we had two different backgrounds. I acted differently. I spoke differently. And on top of that, being a nerd didn't help. So I was often the butt of the joke. They made references to things culturally that I didn't understand. Things that I understand now, but I didn't understand then. They did things that I didn't and had experienced things that I hadn't because I was gifted with a more privileged situation. And because of this, my blackness and my Latino identity was often called into question, all because I was a little different and I didn't act according to the self-perpetuated stereotypes that the other Latino and black kids in my community did. Growing up, I wasn't as into hip hop as I am now. I didn't like salsa or dembow or bachata. That was just not my thing. I've slowly opened up to it more as I've gotten older, but I didn't listen to that when I was younger, especially because all my friends in white high school, yeah, they listened to rap, but it's very gentrified. And also, I'm a Christian. So what did I listen to? Mainly contemporary Christian music, which is labeled white music. So I was ostracized there too. I was constantly told that I act white or that I talk white. And I hated this one specifically. They said that I was just a white man in a black man's body. Oh, that used to get me so freaking tight.
Hey, yo!
I was constantly told that my blackness or my Latino identity was not enough because I grew up a no sabo kid. I didn't speak Spanish as fluently as some of them did. And this is a common experience for minorities who grow up in more privileged situations. Their racial and ethnic identity is constantly called into question. For me, when I hung out with black people, I was called an Oreo, or I was known as a Carlton, as if Carlton is a bad character. It boxes people into this idea of like, oh, you had to do everything I did when I grew up and say the things that I said when I was growing up, or experience what I experienced. If not, you're not this race. This internalized racism, because that's all it is, it's just internalized racism. It leads to an identity crisis in the kids of minority children who have made it out, quote unquote, because they turn to their peers in their neighborhood and they're rejected because they look different and they do talk different and they do act a little different. But then they turn to their peers that share their same racial and ethnic identity, and they're also rejected because they've assimilated too much to the dominant culture. And what do you think happens when a kid feels rejected by two aspects of his identity? Well, I'll tell you, you get two types of people. The race traitor or the ethnic traitor is the person who often abandons the ideals that are commonly associated with their community in order to appeal to the dominant group in a community, country, whatever. This is where you think of your Candace Owens, your Ben Carsons, your Thomas Sowells, these people who are known for agreeing with the dominant group. These people who change their opinions in order to fit in with the dominant group with the majority opinion. Minorities often get mad at these type of people. They often make their group angry because they're going against the grain of the minority group they form part of. In America's case, the people I listed before usually spout conservative white talking points, things that you would usually hear on Fox News. People like this deny the existence of systemic racism and simply think that Black people need to get their act together, oversimplifying the problem of poverty, of injustice. These are the type of Black people to say that rap is not music, even though it very clearly is.
All right, y'all, I'm sorry. Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl was whack. That was one of the worst halftime shows in recent memory. First of all, Kendrick Lamar is not mainstream. Like, people do not know those songs. The white people at the Super Bowl party that I was with.
And they'll spout a bunch of other conservative talking points that they parrot from huge media companies. I'm fairly sure that every minority group has this type of person, the type of person who is ashamed of their heritage and tries to appeal to the majority around them. A type of person that is often, but not always, birthed by internalized racism and a hatred for their identity because they have been rejected. So they make an appeal to the majority group in order to gain favor, in order to find community, in order to be seen as one of the good ones. And sadly, I was the race traitor.
Oh no, this can't be.
I hated my race. I hated my heritage. I didn't want to be perceived as Black. I was American, The nationalist identity overtook who I really was. My father would tell me that I was Black and I would reject the notion completely. My parents would tell me I'm Dominican and I would reject the notion completely. I criticized Black culture harshly, not knowing that a lot of the things from Black culture weren't as bad as they were made out to be. I thought that systemic racism never existed, or if it existed at one point and after the Civil Rights Act, it just magically disappeared. The effects gone forever. I believe that police brutality was not a thing, or that if police brutality happened, it was a very rare occurrence. And this was all in an attempt to be one of the good ones, one of the people who fit in with white people. I became the Uncle Ruckus, the Uncle Tom, the certain animal that looks like it wears a mask, but I'm pretty sure you can't say it on YouTube.
Dear, on behalf of Dr. Umar Ifatunde Oguntade and the International Movement for the Independence and Protection of African People, you have hereby been excommunicated from the African race, and we have rebirthed you into the European power.
I used to be a snow bunny warrior, snow bunnies always, and it wasn't because I had a preference. It was because I didn't like Black women because of the negativity that was associated with Black women. I'm ashamed to say it. It was bad. Now, did this response help me at all? A little bit. I did get some white validation. I got some respect from my white peers, but I was still an outcast. I was still treated as if I was different because no matter what I did, I will never be white, no matter how much I was trying to appeal to that demographic. And do I blame them? Yeah, partially, but some of it is psychology. We're just more likely to pick those who look like us. However, there was prejudice. There were people who treated me different because I was Black. Now, I spoke about my experience being the race traitor, but what about the other side that I spoke about earlier? Well, that's where you become the caricature. It is no secret that America loves Black culture. Hip hop is one of the most dominant and most popular forms of music. Kendrick Lamar just went on a generational run with his latest album, with his latest diss track. He's going crazy out there. They love Black athletes. LeBron receives so much glaze, it's insane. They love watching Black movies, movies like Get Out, movies that star Black people getting up from the struggle. The Blind Side, people love that movie. And they love the aesthetic of the ghetto black kid.
You ain't gonna be able to see nothing soon, twin, cause your ass gonna be sweat cheese in the dirt, twin.
You'll see a lot of white kids trying to emulate the aesthetic and the exaggerated swagger that comes with black culture. A lot of the slang that we use comes from black vernacular, black speech. And since many white kids love black swagger, love black culture, but only as a form of entertainment, there are many suburban black kids who will turn up that caricature, that swagger, that idea up to 11. They dress more like the stereotype. They wear certain things to make them look more black in the white person's mind. They start speaking with more slang. They start abusing the heck out of the N-word. Like, straight up, take a bat, beat that thing over the head. They play the sports black people are expected to play. They try to act tough, act ghetto, act black. The caricature, stuff that they see in movies, stuff that they hear in rap music. That's what they try to emulate. And the caricature is all in an effort to get affection from their peers. However, the issue rises when you realize that this caricature, all it is an imitation. These kids who grew up in the suburbs didn't experience the struggle that their parents experienced. They didn't experience the struggle in the movies from a caricature. And half these rappers be lying about the lifestyles they live anyway. So this type of response leaves the black kid forced to perform. And this performance goes on in front of both white people and black people. Don't let them catch you enjoying anime. Don't let them catch you reading. Don't let them catch you trying to be a little different, using jargon from something that you've learned. Don't let them catch you doing anything that breaks their idea of the race, that breaks the racial stereotype. Because then, after you've been exposed, you'll be treated as an outcast once again. You will get absolutely eviscerated. And the worst thing in that moment you can hear as someone trying to fit in with their racial identity is that you act white. They're viewing you as an outsider. You don't belong with them anymore. That you can't even belong to your own group. And this isolation, this exclusion, it feels like a fate worse than death. And I know I'm exaggerating because, you're not gonna die if someone calls you white, but it feels horrible because you're being separated from a group that is supposed to love you. So the issue, suburban minority kids don't fit in with the racial stereotypes, and therefore they face a lot of bullying and social pressure from the groups around them. The solution? I got two of them. You need to be grounded in your identity. If I could go back in time and talk to my younger self who's going through this identity crisis, I would affirm him in who he is. I'd be like, you don't got to be ashamed that you're black. You don't got to feel like you're less than because you don't look like the people around you. Be proud of who you are. Take joy in who God has made you. I would tell my younger self that he doesn't have to be this exaggeratedly black kid that has to fit this social stereotype, and he doesn't have to bootlick, or he doesn't have to try to appeal to those around him. I would tell him that he doesn't have to reject his blackness or his Latino identity just so he could fit in with a bunch of people that don't care about him. I would tell him just to be him. Enjoy what you enjoy. Don't be ashamed if you're different. I would tell him that he is still loved even if he doesn't meet the stereotype that everyone expects him to, the standards that everyone holds him to. He is still worth something. He's made in Imago Dei. And I extend that message to you, the viewer. You are not a part of some monolith. You don't form part of this massive blob. You are not a clone. You are an individual. You're not a dancing monkey meant to entertain the majority around you. You are not an idea. You are not a concept. You are not a stereotype. You are you. Your racial identity is only one part of you, but it is still a part of you. And you have to accept that. Embrace it. Love it. It's who God made you. I want you to know that your race is not a bad thing, nor is your ethnicity. No matter who tells you, being black is beautiful. Being Latino is beautiful. Being white is beautiful. Various different cultures bring various different things to the table. When I was younger, I felt like a loser because I was black, because I was Latino, because I wasn't popular anymore. But in reality, I wasn't a loser because of those things. Did they play an aspect of it? Yeah, because I wasn't that smooth talking, charismatic, extremely fit black kid. You know, I was a little fat kid. I was like 5'3", 150. I really wish I would have taken better care of myself at the time, that I would have valued myself enough to consistently check on my hygiene, to check on my health. I wish I hadn't resented myself when I was younger. I wish I would have realized the worth that God had given me. I wish I would have realized that I am a new creation in Christ. Now, I'm not saying that the solution to all this stereotyping and social pressure is just, oh, take care of yourself and be yourself. Does it help? Heck yeah. It is like lifting a burden off of your shoulders when you realize you can stop caring about what people say. But I think there is another thing we have to address. We gotta stop believing these stereotypes. Listen, I'm all for a good joke. I can take a race joke every now and then. I make them every now and then. But it gets to a point where if you are constantly the butt of the joke, or if someone around you is constantly being made fun of for their race, like with black people, I know black people who call other black people monkeys to a point where it's OD, or they're talking about how their skin is too black or how they're darker than each other. And it gets to a point where it's just bullying, and that needs to be called out. And if adults believe these things, especially adults who are parents, these children are also going to believe these stereotypes. Every time you say, I thought Asians were supposed to be smart, or you say, I thought black people were supposed to be super strong, that is doing damage. So if you hear those jokes and you see that the person's uncomfortable, call it out, bro, because it's just bullying. I know we want to make an environment where everybody is tough and everyone can handle a joke, but when it's constant, when it is happening over and over again, that needs to stop, because it gets to a point where it's not even funny, bro. It's just racism. You got to realize that either within your race or outside of your race, there are different people from different backgrounds in every group. Not every black person is going to act the same. Not every Hispanic person, and Hispanic is such a broad term. Not every white person acts the same. Not every Asian acts the same. People are different. Yes, is there an aspect of community to people? 100%. But people are also individuals. You have to remember that. So in conclusion, be careful what you believe and what you say, because what you say or what you believe can end up being really harmful to your neighbor. I'm tired of the idea of just saying whatever you want without empathy for your fellow man or woman. Above all, I'm a Christian, and I will do whatever I can to show that biblical love, that agape love that Jesus Christ showed me. And to all my black nerds out there, you're black. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. To all my Latinos out there who are not that good at speaking Spanish or don't speak Spanish, you're still Latino. Shout out people like Corey Kenshin, people like Dashi, people like Berlizzi, you know, these creators who are black nerds. Caleb City, Long Beach Griffey, black nerds who accept being black nerds. RDC, the GOAT, people that paved the way to break the mold of what being black means. Because for so long we had this idea that black people had to be this certain type of image. And, you know, they helped push the boundary more. They made it feel more comfortable to be a black nerd. At least they did that for me. You know, I was comfortable with accepting my identity as a black man who's a little different because of watching these creators. So yeah, that was just on my heart. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, please subscribe, like the video. I want you to comment your experiences with stereotyping, regardless of the race you are, your experiences with Suburbia, all these different things. I do have a Patreon if you want to follow me there. And just a reminder, this is my channel. I make whatever I want, whatever I'm interested in. It's my form of expression. So if you want high quality edited videos about any topic, really, hit that subscribe button. You know what I'm saying? Thank you so much for watching. The Lord bless you and keep you. Peace. I'm fading out again.